ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله صلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن اهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. So in the previous lesson we looked at the first two verses of the verses of fasting from Surah Al-Baqarah, and we mentioned that fasting was something that Allah Ta'ala had ordered the previous nations and the previous prophets had fasted also. Possibly the fasting was similar to the fasting that we know today, and possibly the fasting was different. But the point is, the essence of fasting, the concept existed in the previous nations, just as the concept of all the five pillars existed. Maybe the previous prophets didn't give zakah on cattle, sheep, cows and camels, or gold and silver, but some form of zakah was given. Similarly, all the prophets have the essence of the concept. So the concept of zakah, the concept of hajj and siyam and salah existed. And this again reinforces the idea that Islam is a continuous religion from the beginning of time till today. It's not new. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ didn't come with a new faith. He only came to confirm the previous books and to abrogate some things. Some things were abrogated, some things were brought as new teachings. But as a general rule, Allah Ta'ala says, وَمُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. And he came to confirm what was previously sent down. We said that the fasting of Ramadan is one of the pillars of Islam. When does it become compulsory for a person to fast? Allah Ta'ala says, as we're going to see in the verse today, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. When does it become compulsory for a person to fast? What's the answer to that?
Puberty.
Once they hit the age of puberty. At what age does puberty occur?
It depends, some 15, some 16, some 14.
It differs for different people. Okay. And what are the main signs of puberty? Now, first there are clear signs, then there are secondary sort of signs that some scholars consider signs. But there are clear things here. What are the most obvious signs for hitting the age of puberty?
Cracking of the voice.
That's biology. That's a sign of puberty in biology class. But in the Sharia it's not a sign.
Between right and wrong.
Sorry?
When they can differentiate between right and wrong.
But how do you judge this?
Isn't that the definition?
Some people are 30 years old and still struggle to distinguish between right and wrong.
Experiencing weight training.
طيب, Jazakallah khair. And you're going to all the difficult things, and we've left the simple clear things. Allah Ta'ala says, وَإِذَا بَلَغَ الْأَطْفَالُ مِنْكُمُ الْحُلُمُ. When the children reach the age of hulum, wet dream. So any emitting of semen, mani, immediately indicates that a person has reached the age of puberty. That could be through a wet dream, or that could be through intentional ejaculating of mani. What else is there? Don't ask for the meanings of these words. You just listen to the things you understand. Don't ask for the meanings of these words. If you don't understand them, then you don't ask. And then you ask, you listen to the things that you do understand.
Fasting is not compulsory if you don't understand.
Fasting is not compulsory if you don't understand. That's of course before you've reached the age of puberty. If you don't understand after puberty, then you have to learn to understand. So, what's the second most clear sign?
For women is the height.
Nah, Jazakallah khair. That's the clearest sign for women, and that's the menstrual cycle, and that's the hayd. So the most obvious sign, the most typical sign for men is the emitting of semen, mani, and the most obvious sign for women is having a menstrual cycle. These are the signs that the scholars have agreed upon. There are some signs, such as growing thick hair and things like that. These are signs that the Hanabila, for example, they consider this to be a sign of having reached the age of bulugh, if the other signs don't become apparent. Otherwise, if none of these signs appear, then a person reaches the age of puberty, according to the Hanbalis at the age of 15, and according to other scholars, 18, some scholars say 16, some scholars say 17. That's if none of these signs appear. Yeah, that's if none of these signs appear. If they appear, then even at the age of 9, they've reached the age of bulugh, because people are different. What if a person fasts at the age of 7 or age of 8 before having reached the age of puberty? Is that a valid fast?
No.
It's valid. What do we mean by valid?
Would he receive ajr?
Would he be rewarded for that? Yes. Yes. It's a good deed. It's a good deed. He understands the good deed and therefore is rewarded for that deed. On the other hand, someone who's incapable of 10 years, this is distinguishing between right and wrong, and that typically is given the age of 7 as an indicator. It's given the age of 7 because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Muru abna'akum bis-salati li-7." Command your children to pray at the age of 7. So it's as though he made 7 years of age a sort of indicator towards when children start to properly comprehend. And of course children are different, some might comprehend a little earlier than others, but as a general guideline. So if a child performs an act of worship much before the age of 10 years, this is not counted as a good deed and it's not counted as a sin, because they're not considered to have a valid intention. Yeah? If a 2-year-old child picks up a coin and puts it in the sadaqah box, that's a very good thing. But the lack of intention of what's happening there means that there's no reward, there's no consideration for reward. Because reward is based on intention. And someone at such a young age doesn't even know what's going on. Maybe they saw their father doing it, or maybe his dad picked him up and made him put it into the bucket or something along those lines. But once a child reaches the age of 10 years, the age of distinguishing about the age of 7, the age of 7 according to the Hijri calendar, the Islamic calendar, then in this case their good deeds count, their good deeds are valid. But they're not held to account. They're not held to account. So if they committed a sin, or they left something compulsory, even if they committed a major sin, it doesn't count towards someone who has not reached the age of bulugh yet. Okay, so that's when fasting becomes wajib. However, just as we are encouraged to teach children to pray from an early age, we should encourage children to fast from the age that they start to, you feel that they have an ability to fast. And they don't have to fast for a whole day, they can fast for part of the day, and then they can work with it like that. But fasting is more difficult than prayer, because fasting requires an extra exerting of physical effort, and it's not so easy. And because of that, it needs a person to have gotten into the habit beforehand. If they've never done it, once they hit the age of puberty, they start to fast, they'll struggle to fast. Allah Ta'ala says in the verse that we're going to look at today, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. The month of Ramadan, in which the Quran was revealed. In which the Quran was revealed. The Quran was revealed over a period of how many years? 23 years. So the Quran, unlike the Torah was revealed all at once, a book. The Quran was not revealed all at once, it was revealed over a period of time. And when the disbelievers said, لولا أنزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة وقال الذين كفروا لولا نزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة. Those who disbelieved said, how come the Quran wasn't revealed all at once? What's all this every few days, few verses revealed? Allah Ta'ala says, كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. In that way, we keep your heart firm with it. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. And we keep your heart firm with it. What does that mean? That means that when knowledge is received over a period of time, it's more likely to stick in the heart of an individual. And that's the heart of the Prophet ﷺ as well as the Sahaba. If the companions would have had hundreds of verses, thousands of verses thrown at them all at once, that's very difficult. It's very difficult to take on board. Yeah? And this should be reflected in the way that we teach Islam, and the way we teach our children as well. And this is why sometimes we have high expectations of our children, particularly those who have great concern for their children learning about Islam and memorizing the Quran, etc. So we throw everything at them all at once. But the Sahaba didn't have everything thrown at them all at once, and they were adults. They were adults. So knowledge shouldn't be thrown at people all at once. Yeah? The knowledge should be, time should be taken with knowledge. Time should be taken with knowledge. Okay, it doesn't matter. A child is 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old. Of course they're still learning. Of course they're going to make mistakes. Of course they're going to do things that are wrong. That's very unrealistic to expect someone who is at such a young age to be an expert in knowledge and super pious and ultra religious and away from sin and so on. Try doing it as an adult first. Then we can hold children to the account to that same standard. That's not realistic. That doesn't mean to lower the standards. Children are different. Children are different. Some people have the motivation to learn. They want to learn. They want to study. They want to memorize the Quran. Alhamdulillah, that's a gift from Allah. And they should be encouraged appropriately. Other children don't have that. They don't have that. And that's why this idea of making every single child memorize the whole Quran, that's not so realistic. It's not realistic. I spoke to one of the head teachers of a school, an Islamic school, and he said our aim is to do this, that, and our aim is that every student leaves having memorized the Quran. Every student leaves having memorized the Quran. And this is done by them starting very early in the morning, maybe 7ish, 8ish in the morning, and then leaving around 4, 5 o'clock. That's too much. That's far too much. That's not realistic, and this is how you make people hate reading the Quran. I'm a school teacher, and I speak to children, and the majority of children, when they talk about Hifz class, they say, "Sir, what's the point of Hifz class? What's the point?" They don't see the point, because they're not being taught Quran properly. The Prophet ﷺ didn't teach the Sahaba the Quran just Hifz, memorize. La, they were taught practicing the Quran. So now when they have, as adults, many people wish they could memorize the Quran. Why? Because now they appreciate the meaning of the Quran. Now they appreciate the virtue and the greatness of the Quran, so they themselves want to memorize it. Perhaps if we are encouraging our children to understand the meanings of the Quran, what the Quran is, and the teachings of the Quran, perhaps they themselves will want to memorize the Quran. It's not for every person. That's the point. It doesn't mean that those who are memorizing the Quran should be stopped. There's nothing greater than having the Quran in your heart. But the point is, it's not something that we should insist on and make a priority when it's not a priority. Other things are a priority. So the Quran was revealed in Ramadan over a period of time. So how can Allah Ta'ala say the Quran was revealed in Ramadan when it was revealed over 23 years? Some scholars say it started in Ramadan. And this is the apparent wording of the Quran. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil mubarakatin. Inna kunna mundhirin. So a number of scholars say first the Quran was revealed in Ramadan, and then it continued to be revealed after that. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says that Allah Ta'ala revealed the Quran all at once in Ramadan, but He revealed it to Bayt al-Izzah. It wasn't fully revealed. And then after that initial revelation in Ramadan, it was then revealed to the Prophet ﷺ over a period of 23 years. And that's a statement of a Sahabi, and it's authentic. And it's not the type of thing that can be said with opinion. So it seems like something that he took from the Messenger ﷺ. But either way, there are two views on the issue. The point is the Quran was revealed first in Ramadan, and then over a 23-year period of time. طبعا, did all the Sahaba memorize the Quran? Not all of them memorized the Quran. No? That should be kept in mind, because not everyone has that strength, and that's something that should be kept in mind. People have different strengths. Some people have a strength to do this, some people don't have a strength to do that. And that's why Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ لِيَنْفِرُوا كَافَّةً فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ. It is not for all the believers to make nufur, all of them together. I.e., it is not realistic or possible that all the believers go away and spend their time seeking knowledge and becoming scholars. فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ. So if only from each group, some of you could go away and spend time learning and seeking knowledge, لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ, so that they may gain understanding in the deen. وَلِيُنْذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَحْذَرُونَ, so that they can return back to their people and warn them and teach them, etc. and so on. So Allah Ta'ala said, when it came to scholarship, knowledge, it's not befitting, it doesn't make sense, it's not possible. Forget does it make sense or not, it's not possible that every person is a alim. Not possible. So therefore, a group of you, see he said, ta'ifa minkum, a group from amongst you. That means every location should have scholars coming out of them. Every location should have people of knowledge from them. England, should we have scholars from England? Yes, we should. Wales should have scholars in Wales, because there are Muslims there, there are a group of Muslims there. So some people should come from them and seek knowledge and learn, and then pass that knowledge on. That's something that should happen. And that's how knowledge remains. That's how we can avoid ignorance. Widespread ignorance happens when? It happens when scholars are only in limited areas, but most places don't have scholars. When we're in a situation where the majority of people, or the majority of places do not have scholars, you'll find ignorance becomes widespread. So similarly, not every person is expected to do everything that's good. Not every person is going to perform jihad, physical fighting. Not every person is going to become a scholar. Not every person is going to become a alim. Not every person is going to become a muhaddith. Not every person is going to become a doctor. But we need people from every community to do things. And that should be kept in mind, so that we have realistic targets for ourselves and those who are young. The Quran is what signifies and symbolizes the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is the month of Quran. And this is why in the month of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ would revise the Quran with Jibreel every Ramadan. Every Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ would revise the Quran with Jibreel. Some scholars took from this is important, especially for those who memorize the Quran. Some scholars took from this that it is recommended to recite the Quran from beginning till end at least once a year to someone who's more knowledgeable than you. It's recommended to recite the Quran to someone who's more knowledgeable than you every year. A teacher, you read the Quran to them. If you memorize them, from memory. If you don't memorize them, from recitation, from the Mus'haf. Why? Because this is a practice the Prophet ﷺ performed every year with Jibreel in Ramadan. And as you know, in the final year in which the Prophet ﷺ passed away, in that Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ read the Quran to Jibreel twice. So, the Quran is considered a key in Ramadan. And when the month of Ramadan enters, we ask Allah Ta'ala to allow us to witness Ramadan and accept our actions in Ramadan. When the month of Ramadan enters, the Quran should be our focus. Some scholars would stop all their classes during Ramadan. No classes. No hadith, no fiqh, no anything. Everything Quran. All about the Quran. Reciting and studying and understanding. And that's something that we should make a target for ourselves in Ramadan. And it is better to read the whole Quran at least once in Ramadan, to read the whole Quran once, and spend some time trying to study the meanings of the Quran, than to read the Quran 10 times, That's without exaggeration. Than to read the Quran 10 times without having an understanding. In fact, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, rahimahullah ta'ala, the great mufassir, scholar of tafsir, and he's a scholar of hadith and a scholar of fiqh, but he's known for his tafsir because of his famous book. He says, I don't understand how a person can enjoy reciting the Quran when they don't know the tafsir of the Quran. So, the more we have understanding of the Quran, every time we recite the Quran, we will find that the recitation is different. This recitation is different to the previous recitation. The recitation with no understanding is not like the recitation with understanding. The recitation with understanding makes us feel that I didn't know the Quran was this relevant to me. I didn't know the Quran was this relevant to our lives. I didn't know we can take so much knowledge from the Quran. Really. The amount of knowledge, we might see the Quran's a book of barakah. Just some blessings, talks about Allah, talks about Jannah, talks about, religion. The Quran has guidance for all of our lives. The Quran has guidance in all aspects of life. The way the Quran talks about buying and selling, the way the Quran talks about marriage and divorce, the way the Quran talks about treaties with others, how to interact with Muslims, how to interact with non-Muslims, how to behave during war, exceptional. And this is why Allah Ta'ala says in this verse, what does He say? الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ. That's objective number one of the Quran. Huda, a guidance for people. The Quran is a guidance for people. And therefore, if we see the Quran as just blessing, we've not understood the Quran. The Quran is not just for blessing, to be recited at the start of events, to be placed inside the house, to be placed in the car, in case an accident happens, we have the blessing of the Quran. These are small things. These are small things. Quran is there with meaning. The Quran is there with meaning. And one of the things that indicates the emphasis on the Quran during Ramadan is Salat al-Taraweeh. And Salat al-Taraweeh is of course a sunnah. A sunnah established by who? Who established the practice of Taraweeh? Umar. Any different answers? The Prophet ﷺ. Alhamdulillah. Now, the Prophet ﷺ is the one who legislated Taraweeh. First, he led the Sahaba in prayer during the night of Ramadan for the first day, then the second night, then the third night. And each night more and more people were congregating in the masjid to pray with the Prophet ﷺ. Then the fourth night he didn't come out. He stayed in his home. And his home was next to the masjid. He didn't come out, and people were waiting for him to come out. And he didn't come out. And the Sahaba waited, and the Prophet didn't come out. Then he said to them, on another occasion, he said that I feared that if I continued this practice, it would become obligatory upon you. I feared that it would become obligatory upon you. Because legislation is still happening. New rulings are still coming about. Yeah? New rulings are still coming about. So instead, the Sahaba would all just pray individually. And this continued in the time of Abu Bakr and the beginning of the time of Umar. The Sahaba would pray, some individuals, some would pray in groups around the masjid. And it was done like that. Everyone would pray the night prayer. And generally the night prayer was performed towards the end of the night. So what did Umar do? Umar simply reintroduced the practice. Umar reintroduced the practice. He had the companions praying behind who? Ubay ibn Ka'b. Because Ubay ibn Ka'b is one of the scholars of the Quran. So he had all the companions praying behind Ubay ibn Ka'b, and all the Sahaba gathered behind one Imam, one Salah, and he made it so that it's at the beginning of the night. Yeah? And that's why he said, Ni'matul bid'ati hadhi. And this is a blessed innovation. Innovation from a linguistic perspective. Because innovation is anything that is new or introduced, etc. Otherwise, as we said, in reality, it's not an innovation because the Prophet ﷺ practiced it. Umar simply reintroduced it, and they were praying it at the beginning of the night. Then Umar said, وَالَّتِي تَنَامُونَ عَنْهَا خَيْرٌ. But the one that you sleep during is better. Meaning that it is better for you to sleep at the end, to perform tahajjud and the night prayer at the end of the night, but this is still a blessed action, praying Taraweeh at the beginning of the night. Yeah. So that's the first thing that should be kept in mind. Taraweeh is a practice of the Prophet ﷺ, not from Umar. But this was Umar's role. Taraweeh is a night prayer, and therefore there's no harm in how many rak'ahs a person prays. And this is why throughout history the scholars have prayed a different number of rak'ahs of Taraweeh. The Prophet ﷺ prayed during the night prayer. As Aisha says, in Ramadan as well as outside Ramadan, he prayed 11 rak'ahs. Sahaba, prayed a number of them 20. And some of the generations of the Tabi'een and others prayed more than that. So there didn't seem to be this type of strictness on the number of rak'ahs. But the majority of scholars from the former Zahed, they recommend 20 rak'ahs. That's the majority of scholars' position. And most of the masajid today, the Hanafis are the only ones who have stuck firmly to the 20 rak'ahs. All the other masajid have followed 8 rak'ahs. Even though the Shafi'i madhab is that 20 rak'ahs is recommended. And the Hanbali madhab is that 20 rak'ahs is recommended. And the Maliki madhab is that 20 rak'ahs is recommended. In one position, the Maliki madhab 36 rak'ahs. And the Hanafi madhab is that 20 rak'ahs is recommended. It's only really the Hanafis who have stuck firmly to this. Many of the places today pray 8 rak'ahs during Ramadan. Taraweeh, they pray 8. Even in North Africa, and maybe West Africa, West Africans here, 8 rak'ahs. So things have changed. In North Africa, even though the countries are Maliki, same with West Africa, Mali, Nigeria and Senegal, they're all Maliki in madhab, but they've taken with the easier option. As time goes on, we always take easier and easier options. So 8 rak'ahs is the widely practiced thing today. And like we said, there's no problem at all. The reward, alhamdulillah, is a reward in full. During Taraweeh, a person can continue to pray after Taraweeh if they wish. And just because you've prayed in the masjid with the Imam, does that mean that it's not permissible to pray further? No, we can pray more rak'ahs if we wish. Yeah. And it is good to continue the salah with the Imam and then to perform extra rak'ahs afterwards if you wish, if you want. If you think that you're going to stay up for sure to pray, then it is better to pray with the Imam, but pray 2 rak'ahs. And even when the Imam prays witr, you should add an extra rak'ah after he finishes his salah. He says, Assalamu alaikum, you stand up and add another rak'ah. Why? Because there's only one witr during the night, as the Prophet ﷺ said. There is no 2 witrs in one night. Yeah? There's no 2 witrs in one night. So you perform with the Imam, and then when you go home, you perform 2 rak'ahs, and then 1 rak'ah witr. If you want to pray witr with the Imam because you're not sure if you're going to get up or not, you pray witr with the Imam, and then when you go home, if you're up, alhamdulillah, you can pray more. If you fall asleep, alhamdulillah, you've prayed witr already. As well as that, Salat Taraweeh is a sunnah, it's recommended. What are some of the key differences between obligatory prayers and recommended prayers? Accountability.
If you don't pray
the Fard is compulsory, you have to perform it. The Nafil you don't have to perform. Okay. So Salat Taraweeh is not wajib, it's recommended. Fine. What else? Anything else? There's different rulings.
The rules will be more rigid, is it?
For what?
In the obligatory.
The rules are stricter. Like what?
For example, you can't increase or decrease the number of rak'ahs. If
Taraweeh you can increase.
A particular
okay, fine.
Obligation.
Fine. Anything else?
The time as
well.
The time for Fard prayers is specific.
Okay. Fard has specific timings. What else?
Concept of Jama'ah.
Jama'ah can be for both, nafil and fard.
For fard, it's more
Emphasized. It's not fard, but it's emphasized. For fard, for the obligatory prayers, it's more emphasized. Okay?
More reward for fard.
Fine, more reward. But what about the difference in the method of performing the salah?
For the fard, I mean, there's iqamah, whereas the other one.
For the fard, there is?
The fard, there's iqamah. You'll have to. Not if you pray on your own. You'll have to recite the iqamah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Shalla la ilaha illallah.
You mean the adhan and the iqamah, yeah? Okay.
two rakahs.
Fine.
After 2 rakahs, you can't pray surahs in the 3rd and 4th.
Yes?
In the 3rd and 4th rakah of farz,
Right.
you don't add surahs in it.
Okay.
In your.
And these are,
The actual ruling might be made
I'm thinking, the rulings are relaxed. That's the first step. I want to know what are those things which are relaxed in the nafil prayer.
In the fard salat, you have the specific rakah you have to pray.
We mentioned that, specific rakat. Alhamdulillah. That's the first thing. In the fard, in the obligatory prayer, standing is wajib. The Prophet ﷺ said, صَلِّ قَائِمًا, pray standing. فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَقَاعِدًا. If you can't, then pray sitting. The nafil prayer, you can pray sitting from the beginning. Even if there is no illness. Even if there is no hardship. So that means that if a person has the choice between going home to rest, you're tired. You're not used to praying for so many rak'ahs, like most of us. So Taraweeh comes and your legs are aching, back is aching, knees are aching, everything's aching. So the option is going home and resting, or praying sitting. Pray sitting. You can pray sitting. There's no issue. Yeah. Praying sitting during nafil prayers is permissible. If we have an excuse for sitting, then the reward is the same as the one who's standing. If we don't have an excuse but we're just a bit tired, we find it easier.
That's not an excuse then?
Being tired is not an excuse, but it's permissible. It's permissible, but the reward is not going to be the same. So if we have a valid excuse, an illness, I can't stand, will your reward be less than the one who's standing? No, the same. If you don't have a valid excuse, but you're just a bit tired, or you want to relax a bit, that's fine. There's no sin. In fact, it's permissible. The Prophet ﷺ allowed it explicitly. But of course, the reward is not going to be the same. But there's no problem. It's definitely going to be more reward than going home and sleeping.
What about praying with jama'ah or not on your own?
Praying jama'ah or praying alone is optional, because this is a nafil.
And the ajr or the reward is the same?
Praying jama'ah is better, without doubt. Praying salat tarawih in jama'ah is better than praying it alone. Why? Because tarawih has become like a symbol of the Muslims. And when we think of Ramadan, the atmosphere, what makes the atmosphere of Ramadan is that people gathering, and people who normally you never see. During Ramadan you see them every night, because Tarawih gathers people and brings people together. It's become a sha'ira from the sha'ira. It's like Eid, one of the symbols of Islam. So therefore praying in Jama'ah is better, but it's not wajib. So if you one day don't want to go to the masjid, pray at home. Pray at home. But sticking to the masjid is best, because the more at home, the more likely you are to become a bit lazy, and then maybe become neglectful of this.
Is the same for women as well? Praying at home versus.
Same thing. Women should attend. Women attend them.
Is it more sawab?
No doubt. No doubt. Women are rewarded as well. Yeah. Women are rewarded for attending Salat Jama'ah. I don't know why there are some upset faces here.
Even though the best place for women to pray is inside the house and
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because most of the hadith are not weak. That's the first thing. And secondly, as we said, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged women to go out for Salat Eid, even those women who are not praying. Those women who are not praying in the first place. He encouraged them to go out for Eid. Why? Because Eid is like one of the, as we said, the symbols of Islam, one of the open, apparent symbols. Tarawih is similar. If a woman goes to the masjid, then she'll be rewarded for that. The Prophet ﷺ said that the reward of jama'ah is 25 or 27 times greater than the reward of the individual. He didn't say man or woman. He didn't say man or woman. So unless you have a hadith which explicitly says that a woman is not going to be rewarded the same, then we take the hadith as general. Hadith is a general statement. And that's the qa'idah, that every hadith is taken to be general, unless we have a proof to specify it. If a woman doesn't attend the masjid for Taraweeh because of a reason, children, okay, or whatever other reason, then she can pray at home and her reward is the same. Her reward is the same. This is a principle. Allah doesn't reduce someone's reward because they didn't do something they can't do. How can their reward be reduced for that? A woman who's on her menstrual cycle, who doesn't pray, is rewarded just like the one who's praying 5 times a day. Because when she's not praying, why is she not praying? Why is she not praying when she's not praying? Because Allah commanded her to not pray. That's why. No reward is reduced for a person who doesn't do something due to not being able to do it. The reward is the same. As the Prophet ﷺ said, when the companions went on a journey for jihad, and the hadith is in the Sahihain, he said, there are people from your brothers who are in Medina. Every step that we take, they're with us. And everything that we do, they're with us. حَبَسَهُمُ الْعُذْرُ. An excuse is what prevented them from joining us. He said their reward is exactly the same. The only thing that stopped them is an excuse. So the same applies here. As for, as you said, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, وَبُيُوتُهُنَّ خَيْرٌ لَهُنْ, then a number of the Huffaz say that is da'if. Their houses are better for them. Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, لَا تَمْنَعُوا إِمَاءَ اللَّهِ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ. Do not prevent the women from attending the masajid. وَبُيُوتُهُنَّ خَيْرٌ لَهُنْ, and their homes are better for them. Al-Bukhari and Muslim don't report this second edition. Yeah? So Al-Bukhari and Muslim report, لا تمنعوا إماء الله مساجد الله وليخرجن إذا خرجن تفلات. And when they go out, let them go without applying perfume. These are the hadith in the Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim. Some other narrations, which are not in Bukhari and Muslim, mention, do not prevent women from going to the masajid, and their houses are better for them. This edition of their houses are better for them is not mentioned in Bukhari, nor is it mentioned in Muslim. And because of that, why did Bukhari and Muslim not mention it? Even though it contains a very important ruling. A very important ruling. Yeah? Al-Bukhari didn't mention it, Muslim didn't mention it, indicating towards that there is a lack of authenticity of that edition, which is why they didn't include that hadith and instead included this wording that they didn't mention. So, that's that. Having said that, a number of the scholars say that a woman praying at home or in the masjid goes back to her circumstance. For some women, attending the masjid is good, recommended. And for other women, maybe it's better for them to not attend the masjid due to other more important commitments. And it is more important to do those things that are compulsory, if there is a compulsory thing that needs doing, than to do those things that are recommended. Think about the female companions attending the masjid. How can the Prophet ﷺ advise women to pray at home, and the women put more effort into getting this reward? The women at the time of the Sahaba, did they attend the masjid or not? They attended the masjid? Did the wives of the Prophet ﷺ attend the masjid? Yes, they did. Aisha radiallahu anha reports and tells us that the women used to attend the masjid for Fajr, when most men are asleep. Women used to attend the masjid for Fajr, and they used to attend for Isha. Okay, they used to attend for Fajr, they used to attend for Isha. So, if the Prophet ﷺ is commanding women to not attend the masjid, then who's the first people to stick to that command? It would be the female companions at the time. And the wife of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, who's Atika, she used to attend the masjid. And Umar didn't want her attending the masjid. He wanted her to pray at home, stay at home. So she said to him, لا أمتنع حتى تمنعني. I'm not going to stop going to the masjid until you stop me. If you stop me from going, I'll stop going to the masjid. So he said, لا أمنعك. I said, I'm not going to stop you. Why? Because he knows the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تمنعوا إماء الله مساجد الله. Don't stop the women from attending the masajid. And this hadith is well known. The hadith is in all the books of hadith, including the Sahihain. And when Abdullah ibn Umar said, Wallahi lam namna'ahum. By Allah, we're going to stop them from going to the masjid. This is the son of Abdullah ibn Umar, who's Bilal. Bilal ibn Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab. قال إذا يتخذنه دغلا. If we let them attend the masjid, they're going to take it as a joke. Attend whenever they want, go out whenever they want, come in whenever they want. I said, no, there's no way we're going to let them go to the masjid. So Salim ibn Abdullah, who was another child of Abdullah ibn Umar, said, فَسَبَّهُ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ سَبًّا لَمْ أَسْمَعْهُ سَبَّ أَحَدًا بِهِ قَطْ. He cursed him with words that I've never heard him curse with before. He cursed his own son. Why? Because he said, I just told you, the Prophet ﷺ said, don't prevent women from attending the masjid. And you say, Wallahi, I'm going to stop them from going. So he said, لَا أُكَلِّمُكَ أَبَدًا. I'm not going to speak to you ever again. So, that same thing, and the funny thing is, one of our mashayikh says, he says some scholars have taken the opinion of Bilal, that's to stop women from attending the masjid, and they left the statement of the Prophet ﷺ and left the statement of Abdullah ibn Umar, which is of course problematic, which is due to an exaggeration of preventing potential harms or things like that. But the Prophet ﷺ made it an explicit statement because he knew that this would happen. He knew that this is the type of thing that would occur, that people might over-exaggerate. As well as that, today we have access to everything. Women are everywhere, all over the place. Nobody says a word when women are in town. Go to the city centre, 95% women. Outside Stratford Road, Ladyborough Road, etc., 95% women. Most of the shops are women's shops, women's clothes shops. So nobody has a problem with women going to the clothes shops, but they have a problem going to the masjid. That's an inconsistency in thinking. Then we complain, Shaykh, my wife is not praying properly. That's because she's at home all day and you're in the masjid. You're attending classes, you're attending durus, you're attending congregational prayers and so on. You want her iman to increase by watching you go to the masjid? Obviously, they also need things that increase their iman and keep their religion. So that's that. This is supposed to be a class of tafsir and it's turned into a class of women attending the masjid. But no problem, because the question was asked, so hopefully that answers that. So Salat al-Tarawih, as we said, is a sunnah, and it is better for a person to pray seated than not pray at all, and it's better for a person to pray at home than to not pray at all. And if a person can pray in the masjid, and pray standing and perform everything to the best of his ability, then obviously that's greater and much better. Allah Ta'ala says, وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ. This Qur'an was revealed as a guidance and to distinguish between that which is right and wrong. That's the aim and objective of the Qur'an. And as I said, and I will repeat it over again, we should try and constantly read the meanings of the Qur'an, extract meanings from the Qur'an. We'll find meanings that are amazing. We'll find meanings that are really amazing. Allah Ta'ala says, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. So whoever witnesses the month should fast it. Whoever witnesses Ramadan should fast it. How does Ramadan enter? The Prophet ﷺ says, صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. Fast when you see it, and break your fast when you see it. See it being the new moon, the new crescent moon. And the light of the moon appears in the middle of the month, maybe the 14th or 15th of the month, Hijri month. It appears as a full moon. And then the light, or it appears, obviously the moon is the same, but it appears smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until the new crescent moon appears. When the new crescent moon appears, that's the new month, every month. That's the same cycle for every single month. When we sight the moon, that's the month of Ramadan entered. If we don't sight the moon, then we continue the previous month. What's the previous month before Ramadan? Sha'ban. We continue Sha'ban. How many days? 30 days. As the Prophet ﷺ said, الشهر هكذا وهكذا وهكذا. And he said, وهكذا وهكذا وهكذا. The month is either 29 or the month is either 30. No month can be 28 days, and no month can be 31 days. That's the Gregorian calendar. February is sometimes 28 days, and other months the 31. So if we sight the moon, we fast. So long as we've completed at least, of course, 29 days of Sha'ban. We have to have 29 days of Sha'ban passing at least. If we don't sight the moon, then that's when we continue that extra day and then fast the following day. If we've completed 30 days of Sha'ban, do we need to sight the moon? No, because 30 days are finished. 30 days are finished. If some people around the world sight the moon, should we all fast? The answer of the position, the majority of scholars say yes. If people in one place in the world sight the moon, in America, in Australia, in Congo, in Malaysia, in China, in Japan, anywhere, if the moon is sighted, then the whole ummah should fast. That's the position of the majority of the fuqaha, including the Hanbali scholars. Abdullah ibn Abbas had a different opinion, and this is the position of a number of the Shafi'i scholars, and that is that we fast with our people. When we sight it, we fast. And that's really what people are practicing today. And this is why most of the years you'll find people fasting on different days, which is not a big problem. But the least that should happen is that every community should fast together. Every community should fast together. And when we were in Holland, there was a lady who joined our family on the day of Eid. I need to join us for food and things like that. And then we found out that, how's your husband, where is your husband, etc. She said, oh, my husband's celebrating Eid tomorrow. At least the same household. If we can't get the whole country to fast on the same day and have Eid on the same day, at least the same house. Is that too much to ask? He's following a masjid and she's following a different masjid. It's not appropriate. If husband and wife don't spend Eid together, who's going to spend Eid together? So, that's something that really is the least that we should aim for. Again, some people have a problem with the UK in general. So if someone tells them that the moon is sighted in the UK, it's like UK is kuffar and UK is... It doesn't mean anything. And is the moon, when we look at it, non-Muslim moon or something? The UK is the UK. This is the land that we're living in, this is the community we're living in. We should be doing things together to the best of our ability. If not, alhamdulillah, we do the best that we can. We should at least fast with the congregation, with our local masjid or something like that. Allah Ta'ala says, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَامٍ أُخَرَ. And this came in the verse before it as well. Those who are ill or traveling, then they should make up fasts, the same number of fasts on other days. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you. وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. And He doesn't want difficulty for you. And this shows us that even when it comes to acts of worship, we should be balanced. We should do what we can do. We shouldn't overburden ourselves. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْأَعْمَالِ مَا تُطِيقُونَ. Take with the actions that you are capable of doing, that are within your capability. Don't overburden it, because overburdening is short term, it will not last. We're human beings. We get bored very quickly. Even in Ramadan, the second week you'll find many people are bored from Taraweeh and from reading the Quran. That's the nature of human beings. We get bored very quickly. So therefore we should be doing things within our ability, within our capability. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمْ يُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you. And we said last week that the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard that some people fasted when they were traveling and it was very hot, and they didn't want to break their fast, even though they were told that the Prophet ﷺ has broken his fast, he said, أُولَٰئِكَ الْعُصَىٰ أُولَٰئِكَ الْعُصَىٰ. They are the disobedient ones, they're the disobedient ones. And the Prophet ﷺ also says, as in Sahih Muslim, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصِّيَامُ فِي السَّفَرِ. It is not from piety to fast when traveling. We mentioned it last week, and we mentioned what it means. Okay. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةِ وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, so that you may complete the number of fasts prescribed for you. لِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ, so that you may complete the iddah. This means that completing the full fast of Ramadan is a priority. Somebody last week asked about Shawwal and Ramadan. Was it your question last week? About Shawwal, fasting in Shawwal, when you have days to make up in Ramadan. This verse gives us an answer. Because Allah Ta'ala says, وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ, so that you may complete the prescribed number of fasts. Complete them. Okay? And that means that completing the fast of Ramadan is a priority. After that we can think about recommended fasts. وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ, and so that you may magnify, make takbir, تُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ, because of what He has guided you to. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, and so that you may be grateful to Allah. On the day of Eid, what do we all do together? So, okay, celebrate and takbir in relation to this verse. لِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ, so that you may make takbir of Allah, magnify Allah. Why magnify Allah? عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ, for what He's guided you to. So when on the day of Eid we say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd, we're magnifying Allah, but we should do so with what? Which intention? The intention that Allah has guided us to Islam, and the intention that Allah has guided us to following the way of the Prophet, and the intention of glorifying and magnifying Allah for allowing us to complete the fasts of Ramadan. This great pillar of Islam, we've completed it. That's something to be grateful for. That's something to magnify Allah for. So when we say Allahu Akbar, we shouldn't just do it as a ritual. Yeah? We shouldn't just do it as a ritual, we should do it with this intention. This is why we are saying Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, so that you may be grateful. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَإِذَا, and this is the following verse, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, and if your servants ask you about me, then I am near, I'm close. فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ, I respond to the dua of the one who supplicates. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ, so let them respond to me and have faith in me, lest they be, so that they may be led aright, so that they may be guided. Notice how Allah Ta'ala speaks about the rulings of fasting and then connects things back to a spiritual act of worship, connects things back to Allah, a connection with Allah. This is the beauty of the Quran that you won't have in the books of fiqh. The books of fiqh have an objective. They mention halal, haram, halal, haram, halal, haram. This is allowed, this is not allowed. This is good, this is not good. But sometimes a person can be so engrossed in that they miss out on the spiritual objectives of these acts of worship. The Quran is not like that. The Quran can be talking about divorce and it reminds you of Allah. It reminds you of Allah. Allah Ta'ala says, for example, وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلُهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. If you divorce your women and their iddah has come close to completing, then either keep them with ma'roof, with goodness, أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, or allow them to go with goodness. أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا, and don't hold on to them in order to harm them. Don't hold on to them, i.e. divorce them and then take them back. When you don't really want to keep them, you just want to prolong things for them, make them wait longer, make things more difficult for them. He says, لَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ, and the one who does so has oppressed himself. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا, and do not take the signs of Allah and the verses of Allah as a joke, as play. And so on. And Allah Ta'ala talks about divorce later on at the end of the page. He says, or the following page, he says, وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ, He says, and do not forget the goodness that is between you. Don't forget that. And Allah Ta'ala says also, وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, and that you forgive and that you excuse is closer to taqwa. Then what does Allah say after that? He says, حَافِظُوا عَلَى الصَّلَوَاتِ وَالصَّلَاةِ الْوُسْطَى وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. He says, stick to your prayers, particularly the middle prayer, and stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with qunut, khushu', with focus and with sincerity. Then he goes back and talks about divorce again. So in the middle of the verses of divorce, Allah is talking about salah and standing in front of Allah and worshipping Allah. This shows that the law that Allah Ta'ala has legislated, and the spirits of the law, and the spiritual beings that we are supposed to be, and having that consciousness of Allah, these two are connected. They're together. They're together. And this is why, for example, a marriage is not a proper marriage if it's just based on law. Oh, you have to do this, I don't have to do that. If I don't have to do that, what's the proof I have to do that? No, I don't. This is not marriage, this is business. I'll give you £1, you give me £1 worth. You give me £5, I give you £5 worth. A marriage is based on, as Allah Ta'ala says, taqwa, consciousness of Allah. It's based on ihsan, excellence, goodness. It's based on forgiveness. وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, that you forgive and overlook. Fasting is the same. Fasting is the same. Whenever we are talking about the law, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, we mustn't forget also these things, these meanings. That's why after talking about the laws of fasting, Allah Ta'ala says, and if your servants ask you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, then I am close. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ, I respond to the one who makes dua. Did he distinguish between the Muslim who is practicing Muslim or non-practicing? Did he distinguish between the one who has a beard and doesn't? Or is everyone included in the verse? A woman who doesn't wear hijab, can she make dua? Can her dua be accepted? Allah Ta'ala says, يُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ, he responds to the dua of the one who makes dua. It's not restricted to certain individuals. In fact, in some hadith, even though the authenticity are disputed, and Shaykh Nasruddin al-Albani considers them to be hasan, the Prophet ﷺ says, اتقوا دعوة المظلوم, be careful of the dua of the oppressed, وإن كان كافرا, even if he's a disbeliever. Even if he's a disbeliever, because he's oppressed. He's oppressed. And this is why the disbeliever asks Allah to guide him to the straight path. Will Allah ignore that or respond to him? Respond. And so these meanings shouldn't be forgotten during the month of Ramadan in particular. During the month that sometimes we maybe trick ourselves, or we allow ourselves to be deceived into thinking that, what's the point of making dua? What type of Muslim am I? I'm a hypocrite, I'm not a proper Muslim. The whole year I've been messing about, now in Ramadan suddenly I want to make dua. Yes, of course. Now in Ramadan make dua. Yes, this is the point of Ramadan. It's the whole objective of Ramadan. Even the Prophet ﷺ would do more in Ramadan. He didn't say to himself, astaghfirullah, I only do this in Ramadan. It's so bad. No, this is Ramadan, I'm going to do more. So exactly the same thing. During Ramadan, of course things are going to be better. And some people after Ramadan, they complain. Oh look, the masajid are not full anymore. Of course they're not full. It's not Ramadan. This is what Ramadan has a special atmosphere to it. Ramadan pushes people to do more and more. It's not like every other month. No doubt we want the masajid to be full as much as possible, but that's unrealistic to expect the same standards throughout the year. Do you keep up the same standard? So don't complain that the masajid are not full. Or don't complain that some people use the term Ramadan Muslims. He's just Muslim in Ramadan. No problem. Let him be Muslim in Ramadan. He only prays in Ramadan. Okay? Does that mean us encouraged to only pray in Ramadan? Of course we don't encourage to pray only in Ramadan. Leaving one salah is a major sin, let alone leaving salah throughout the year. But instead of pushing people away and making them feel like they're not Muslim, at least we should say Alhamdulillah, encourage people. Because maybe for some people that's only a beginning. In the long term, maybe he's going to be praying better than we pray. So this really shouldn't be forgotten during Ramadan. When we do the outward acts of worship, of attending Taraweeh and making dua with the Imam and this and that, we shouldn't forget our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب, we've, I think, said enough. We have one verse remaining. It's the longest verse of these 5 verses, and it talks about relations with the spouse, and it talks about various other things, Fajr, etc. We'll look at that inshaAllah ta'ala. I'tikaf, it also looks at i'tikaf. So we'll look at that in the next lesson, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and we'll suffice with what we've said today. If anyone has any comments, we can take those comments, otherwise we'll end and get ready for Salah inshaAllah. Tafadhal.
Just going back to stopping the women going to the mosque.
Yeah.
But only in relation to the night prayer. So now it's 11 o'clock or so that the night prayer is going to be introduced.
No.
So the woman goes alone to the mosque. What you say about that?
A woman attending alone, whether a woman should attend the masjid or she shouldn't attend the masjid, it goes back to weighing up between benefits and harms. If a woman has responsibilities, such as a young child, imagine there's a young child who's left at home on their own, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Do you think it's permissible, whether man or woman, permissible to leave the child at home and go for Taraweeh? What's the ruling on going to Taraweeh in this case? What's the ruling? Sinful. You're sinful for going to Taraweeh. So it's about benefits. That's when it comes to the actual act of attending the masjid. A woman going to the masjid at night or not going going at night, it depends on benefit. It depends on safety or not, or a lack of safety. If we expect that safety is expected, then alhamdulillah she attends even at night. And we said that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum attended Fajr and Isha, the female companions attended Fajr and attended Isha. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if one of you, he was addressing the women, attends Salat al-Isha with us, then let her not apply perfume. Yeah. And he said that if one of you seeks permission to attend Salat al-Isha, then don't stop her. Don't stop her from attending. So it goes back to safety. Maybe a person is living in an area in which the expectation of harm is high. And in other areas, the expectation of harm is not so high. Borsley Green, for example, Small Heath. Small Heath is a Muslim area. You can comfortably call it a Muslim area. If you go on Coventry Road on Ramadan during the night, the roads are blocked with Muslims. So in that type of environment, maybe you wouldn't have a problem with a woman attending, even if she attends on her own. If there is a fear of a potential problem, then in this case, that should be kept in mind. But as we said, we make something haram not based on what we enjoy or not enjoy. Umar radiallahu anhu didn't want his wife attending the masjid. He didn't have a problem with that. He didn't have a problem with him not wanting his wife to go. So it's not a problem that someone doesn't want his wife to attend the masjid. It's not a problem, because that might be a natural thing that a person doesn't like. And he might see that today nobody's going out. Either a big problem or a threat or something has occurred, and therefore, a man will prevent his women from attending the masjid, for example. But a general prohibition, saying that women can't attend the masjid, or saying that it's not permissible for women to attend the masjid, we say, give us a Quran or give us a hadith. And if you have none of that, then there's a problem, because that hadith contradicts what you're saying. So safety and going at night goes back to benefit, harm, and the decision is based on that. But the standard ruling is the ruling of permissibility. And then after that, the ruling might change depending on circumstance. No.
If a husband decides to prevent the women for his wife from going to the masjid, what is incumbent on the woman to do in this case, the wife?
If a husband stops his wife from attending the masjid. If a husband stops his wife from attending the masjid, then firstly he's disobeyed the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "La tamna'u ima Allah masajid Allah." If he stops her from attending the masjid because he genuinely believes that there is a potential harm or a potential risk, then he has an excuse, because he's responsible for the safety of his family. So he has an excuse, but he has to be genuine.
Even fitna is one it's often cited in my culture in Pakistan, for example, the fitna of women going to the masjid where they interact or they go through the crowd of men, etc. That's been given.
At the time of the, no, it said that the fitna is usually used as an excuse. Firstly, fitna is a very broad term. Fitna is a very broad term. What does fitna mean? Does fitna mean that men are looking at women and women looking at men? Of course, that happens everywhere. Masjid or no masjid. In fact, if anything, now we have things in place which make things easier. Now we have these barriers. So you will attend the masjid, you might not see a single woman. Maybe during Eid and Taraweeh is difficult because the streets are filled. But a person, it's possible for them to attend the masjid and not see any woman, and a woman might not see a man. Now that's possible. Then it's not, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ it wasn't possible, because the women were directly behind the men, with no barrier, in the same masjid. Yeah? In the time of the Prophet ﷺ there was no barrier between men and women, and men and women were entering through the same door, until the women requested to have a door, because they said the men are just shoving through and barging through. So they requested, and they didn't want to hustle with them just to enter the masjid. So they requested a door for themselves. So they were given that. But the men and women were in the same place here, and that wasn't considered to be a problem. So if that was there at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it's not really valid to use it and say it's a problem now, because the same thing occurred at the time of the Prophet ﷺ.
Why did Umar wanted to stop his wife from
Who? He himself didn't like it. He didn't want to stop her. He didn't stop her. Because she said to him, if you stop me from going, the wife of Umar said to Umar, if you stop me from going, I'll stop going to the masjid. He could have said, in that case, I don't want to see you in the masjid again. He said, I'm not going to stop you.
But he did that because of what the Prophet said.
Because of the hadith.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why we're saying it's not a problem that a man doesn't want his wife to go to the masjid, because that might be a natural feeling. It's not a problem. Maybe a woman doesn't want her husband to go to the masjid. A woman might not want her husband, and this is true. Many women don't want their husbands to go to the masjid, definitely not Taraweeh and definitely not Eid. Because they think he's going to go to the masjid and see all these women who are there. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the Salaf said to his wife said to him when he went to Eid, she said, how many attractive women did you see today when you went to Eid? And he said, alhamdulillah, I had my eyes down from the house to the masjid and back. So a woman might not want that either. So there's a difference between what I personally don't like and between the religious ruling. The religious ruling is from revelation, the words of Allah and the words of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ specifically did not allow women to be prevented from attending to the masjid unless there is a clear and explicit harm that you're certain or likely that you feel is likely to occur. Fitna is not an excuse. Fitna is a bad excuse, generally speaking. And it's true that many people use it, many scholars also mention it, but the problem with fitna is that it's too broad. It's far too broad. We want something specific. Does touching happen? If touching happens, we say no. Don't go to the masjid. If men and women are touching each other and they're barging in, etc. Just as if someone was to say, should I kiss the black stone? Even though I'm going to be barging women and women are going to be barging me, say, don't go kiss the black stone. Carry on doing tawaf. Carry on doing tawaf. Why? Because this is something specific. But fitna is not specific. Fitna is too broad. In the haram, fitna might happen. In the haram, fitna might happen. But that's not a reason to not perform tawaf or to not do this or to not do that.
I wanted to know about the sighting of the moon. Is every Muslim expected to look out for the moon, or can a committee be decided for that task?
No, not every Muslim is expected to sight the moon. So long as, even if we had one person or two people sighting the moon, that's enough. In most countries there are committees. As you said, there is a committee to sight the moon. Maybe it's Dar al-Ifta that has a committee for doing that, and then they go and sight the moon, and then they make an announcement for the country. Here we don't really have a joint committee where all the Muslims are following. It would have been nice to have that. Maybe that's something that we will have in the future, inshallah. But it's enough that some trustworthy Muslims say we've sighted the moon. If they say we've sighted the moon, alhamdulillah.
There are websites that give you exact location of the moon. moon based on satellite readings.
No. And some scholars take with that, and that's the European Council for Fettah and Research. The European Council for Fettah and Research says that if the moon is present and sighted, then whether we've achieved that information through actually seeing it, or whether we've achieved it through calculations, that's enough. Yeah. A number of early scholars took with that, and that's the fatwa of the European Council. And this is why recently the European Council for Fettah and Research made a statement saying that Ramadan is going to be on the 6th. And they made a decision now. 6th of May. They made a decision now based on calculations. The problem is, if they make a decision and say it's on the 6th, and the whole Muslim community fasts on the 5th, then we should follow the community. We should follow the community. If the community follows their fatwa, the whole community